So I'm gonna start this up. My project is making culturally conscious decisions, choosing the right people for a software project by Chris Williams. So there's many factors that play into choosing the right project. So you may have to figure out, the first thing is figure out the duration of the project. So I'm just going to mention a lot of the nuts and crooks before I get into the real meat. But you definitely have to figure out how long it's going to take you before you even start any kind of project. Because some things could take you 3 weeks, some things can take you 5 months, some things can take you a year. So I think that's the first and most important thing. 2, you have to figure out how much you're willing to spend on the labor cost of this project. Sometimes you may have a big budget, sometimes your budget may be very small, and so that's gonna play before you decide on like who you need. 3, definitely how are you gonna communicate with the client? So does your client even speak the same language as you? Is there any kind of cultural barrier between you and the person you want to handle your software project? For example, you may want to use a developer you may want to outsource your project to a developer in Japan, because Japan has some of the best tech minds in the world. And so what if your developer, one of the best ones, only speaks Japanese, doesn't speak English? Will that be a problem for you? That's just something to consider and ask yourself. So 2 is, who do you need? We all need someone, but we don't need everyone. Sometimes we do need everyone, and sometimes someone is just not enough. So that's always a very important thing to save you money, save your team money, your budget, deciding the right people. And sometimes more people get this mixed up a lot. More people does not necessarily mean more money. For example, if you're outsourcing a project to India, that doesn't mean you're going to spend way more on 6 developers in India than 2 developers in the United States. It doesn't mean that. You could have those 6 developers accomplish something in 3 months that it would have took 2 American developers a year to do. So more people doesn't always equate to higher cost. The third thing is, where will you get your developers from, as we talked about? So do you want to outsource this in the first place? Like, do you want to stay? So in this project, I'm using America as the home base consistently because I live here. So as an American, are you planning to keep your developers within the States so you can easily catch a plane or catch a bus ride there and visit them and talk about your software project every month without it being a hassle? Or do you want to fly to Japan every 3 months for $2,000 $3,000 round trip, however much the rates are, just to see the progress of your project? And just because I say that like that, I don't mean to say it as traveling is bad, because sometimes that may just be way better and more effective for you than having developers in the state. So what country should you choose to outsource your project to? Do you necessarily want to go to a place where you've heard you can pay the workers way less, or are you considering a place where you think the job will be done way better than what you can do in your home country? That's always another factor that takes play. But I think this question will be answered more in depth in my next slide. And it definitely is a question that many project managers can't figure out right away because you don't know who to outsource to. And so one big thing I take from class, and I'm definitely not trying to summarize anything from a class I had when I was in college. One thing that stuck with me was individualist people and collectivist societies. So a place like the US and Canada are considered very individualist countries. And we know that individuals like to do everything on their own. And a place like Russia are very collectivist. So if you decide that you want a developer who's from your country, from the US, do you necessarily want to pick 3 developers or 4 developers from the US if everyone would tend to feel like they can do the project all by themselves? Like, is that an effective use of your money? Or is it more effective to outsource your project to a country like Japan, India, where they're highly collectivist and they like working in groups, and group working is encouraged, to say, hey, 5 of us, we can work together and tackle this in 2-3 weeks, no time. So, and I think thinking about that, this really stuck out to me because I think that's beneficial if I want a group of people to work on my project. Personally, I would want a group of people. If my project needed to be done by 4 or 5 people at the least, I would outsource it to a collectivist country because I know that they like working together, and I would have to worry less about my developers not getting along and not being able to communicate with each other, because we can't assume that all your developers are going to like each other and everything is going to run smoothly, because you have to plan for problems in any business. And so, on the other hand, I may have a project that may only need to take about one good developer. And so that's not to say that one developer in India wouldn't be able to do the job, but the culture of developers in the United States, I would choose from the United States because developers like to work alone. And if I can get that one person that feels like they can do it all and make an app is feasible by one person in a 3-month span, then hey, I'm gonna go with my American developer. And so, to wrap this up, all I'm really saying is choosing your project is based on the society of the country where you want your developers from. So don't get the wrong idea and say only group project. I'm not saying only group projects should be outsourced, and I'm not saying all individual projects should be in-home projects. You should get developers from your native land. What I'm saying is, outsourcing it to places like India and Japan, you tend to get people who like to work together in collectivist areas. They tend to be better at working in groups, so your project will be better that way. But in collectivist, individualist countries, you tend to find people who are better working alone. Not to say anyone is smarter than anyone else. It's just the culture of where people are raised. And so that can have a huge effect on the development of your software project. So thank you. That's all I have to my talk. My name is Chris Williams, and hope you guys have a good night.